walks away after winning his 100th game as the head coach here at Notre Dame.
The reason I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth, I was born in this country. It isn't what you have, it's what you're taught about the values of life.
We trying to save souls.
So there's a rule in life that said you're either growing or you're dying. And like an old friend once said, we as Americans need to start winning again.
Everyone should ask this question. Am I willing to endure the pain and the suffering and the sacrifice it takes to be a champion?
Greetings and welcome to the Lou Holtz podcast. Most of my life, I've been a pretty confident individual, but I didn't have any justification for feeling that way. It was just my attitude. I remember coaching at the College of William Mary, and we're playing Miami up Florida. And I was confident we'd play very well. We could win the game. Obviously, we did. But the reason I bring it up because this is a hard introduction. There's so many positive things about what Sage has achieved. I just don't want to mess it up or mix it up, but make sure you understand that our guest today is a very special person, Miss Sage Steele. She's one of the country's most popular and respected broadcasters. She's the host of the Sage Steele Show on Bill Maher's podcast network. Previously, she was a fixture at ESPN from 2:07 to 2:23, host of the network's flagging show center, Sage Steele. I know I worked with her for a few years. She is a very talented person, and not just my feeling, but throughout the network. We're talking about a star in Sage Steele. Throughout the years, Sage has hosted a variety of shows and countless live events, including sports centers, covering of the Super Bowl, the Masters, the NBA Finals, the World Series, and several other national and international sporting events. During her 16-year tenure at ESPN, Sage was also the head host of the network's NBA coverage, hosting NBA coverage, countdown on ESPN and ABC from 2013 to 2017 before returning to her sports center. Outside of the sports world, Sage has hosted a variety of events. The Miss America pageant in 2016 and 17 on ABC, the Tournament of Roses Parade on NBC since 2018, and Dick Clark's 2016 Rocket Eve on ABC. In March 2018, Steele co-hosted the ABC special event Volcano Live with Dick Wallendy as the famous daredevil walked the tightrope across a live volcano in Nicaragua. Sage has been a featured guest host on ABC's The View, a guest on Jimmy Kimmel's Live, and profiled by numerous publications, including Rolling Stone's Variety, The Wall Street Journal, and Huntington Post. Before her ESPN success, Sage's journalism career began in 1995 upon graduating from the University of Indiana. She had producing, reporting, and anchoring roles in local markets like South Bend, WSB-TV, where I watched it all the time, in Indianapolis on WISH TV in Tampa Bay Live, before landing Indianapolis, Indiana, in WISH TV in Tampa, WFCS TV, before landing similar roles in regional television networks in Tampa, Fox Sports Florida, and Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Comcast Sports, all the way across the Atlantic. Beyond the spotlight, Steele's had a philanthropical and charitable hand for many passionate causes. Sage is proud to be a board of directors for the Boys and Girls Club of America. She's also in the third-year advisory board for multiple myeloma research. She volunteers with the Alzheimer's Association and is active in her local church in Connecticut. Most importantly, she's a proud mother of 3 children and resides in Florida and Connecticut. Now you can understand why I was nervous about this. There's so many things in there, and I could only wish I could have done 1/10 of them. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome now Miss Sage Steele. Sage, you've had an incredible career. What drew you to want to be part of the sports network shows? And you've had great success at it, but what drew you there?
Honestly, Coach, it was watching people like you. And I don't think you remember this. Maybe you do, because you coaches have very unique, incredible brains that I don't have. But my first TV job was in 1995 in South Bend, Indiana. And you were nice enough to welcome me into your office once. And I got to do an interview. You were the first major sports figure I ever got to interview. And yes,
I did. I remember. And you were a very, very alert young lady that knew what was going on. And there's some people that just know what's going on. Other people suspect what's going on, but you just knew what was going on.
well,
So
I was pretending. Yeah. I was pretending, but I want to let you know, I'm going to answer that question because it means a lot to me to share my why behind my career and my dream. But this is probably 95, I guess probably the 95 season. And, I wasn't actually part of the sports department at WSBT, the CBS affiliate there in South Bend. I wasn't part of the Cool Kids network at WNDU. Basically, that was your network in South Bend. And so but the sports guys couldn't come in that day, so they asked me to go do an interview, and we talked about all kinds of stuff. And then at the end, you and I were talking about dancing, and I got you to do the Macarena, and you started doing the whole thing on tape with me. And I put it on my resume tape, and I believe that getting you to do that dance helped me get my next job in television. So I think I owe you all my success.
Well, I'll tell you what, I did a favor for the fans then, because you've really provided an awful lot of enjoyment.
Thank you. I'm gonna get that. I'm gonna get that tape for you. But I want you to know, my dad is my everything. And my dad actually played football at Army at West Point. In 1966, he broke the color barrier. He was the first black man to play varsity football ever at West Point.
Army Sports Hall of Fame inductee from the class of 1970, Gary Richard Steele. Football, track and field. On the gridiron, Gary Steele earned 3 varsity letters and was Army's first African American to earn a varsity letter in the sport of football. A second-team Newspaper Enterprise Association All-American as a tight end. Steele was a 17th-round draft choice of the Detroit Lions. For his career, Steele caught 66 passes for 1,111 yards and 7 touchdowns and contributed to a pair of wins against Navy. His best season was 1968, when he posted 27 catches for 496 yards and 3 touchdowns. That year, he had 8 receptions against Penn State, shattering the single-game record held by Hall of Famer Bill Carpenter. Steele also earned 4 varsity letters in track and field, 2 indoor and 2 outdoor. He also held the Academy high jump record with a leap of 6 feet 9 inches. From the class of 1970, Gary Richard Steele.
And I was talking to him this morning about coming on with you. And back then, Coach, he was 6'6.5", 220 pounds as a tight end. He said his offensive linemen next to him, Army, in their heyday, were 225, basically the same weight. So it's amazing to think, number one, how big he was, considering, just how football was then. He was considered a giant. But then the O-linemen were the same size. The sport has evolved, but I grew up watching sports with my dad. And when I told him that when I was 11 years old, which exactly 40 years ago, watching the Olympics in 1984, I told him and my mom that I wanted to be a sportscaster because I felt how sports unified people and brought people together. And this is as a little girl. And that's my why behind it, the unity, and then also being around greatness, learning what makes coaches and athletes great.
Well, you be sure to tell your parents what a wonderful job they did in raising you, because you've been a very positive influence on so many people's lives. What's been the most memorable moment of your journalistic career so far?
2 moments. One is more professional, one was personal. The professional one was the 2016 NBA Finals in Cleveland. LeBron had returned to Cleveland, and of course they're playing Stephen Curry and the Golden State Warriors. It was game 3. And our set at ESPN, as you recall, was kind of placed in the stands, like right above the tunnel where the players come out. and we're about 90 seconds away. And I had Dwayne Wade to my right as one of the guest analysts, and then I had Jalen Rose and Doug Collins were my ESPN analysts. And about 90 seconds out, my mind went blank. And, there's no teleprompter. And all I had was my notes and what my ideas were. And you're going on live international TV, probably 20 million people, ABC across the world. And I went blank. And I started to panic. And then I took a deep breath. I said a quick prayer. And what came rushing back to me was this peace. And I was able to smell the roses. And I literally thought back to South Bend and my very first TV job and all the people who kind of laughed at me because I talked too fast and not in a negative way. I was thinking back with such gratitude to have pushed through a lot of fears and to gotten to that stage with those people and a screaming arena with 20,000 people that I just could never have imagined that this shy kid would ever have ended up there hosting our coverage. So that was professionally, but personally, you'll like this. We hosted, remember at ESPN, they did a really good job with the coverage of Veterans Day. And that means a lot to me as a daughter of a veteran and a grandfather. My grandfather was a Buffalo soldier, and just military means everything to me. And we took SportsCenter on the road to Arlington National Cemetery in 2016. And my dad and mom happened to be visiting in DC, and they came just to watch me because they never got to watch me do anything live. And all of a sudden, my producer said, Sage, your father can offer beautiful context on Veterans Day here at Arlington National Cemetery. Let's have it in SportsCenter. My dad was like, nope. And he started to walk away. And I just went, Daddy, like I always used to. And I begged him. And my dad got to come on SportsCenter live with me.
What do you hope people keep in mind on Veterans Day today and every year?
Well, Sage, one of the things I think is very important is that we are an incredible country. We are so diverse. We are so blessed with so many wonderful things. We have to remember that the blessings that we have received have come from the people who serve, the people who have served, and those who have given the ultimate sacrifice, and we're sharing the ground with them here today.
Yes, we are. Personally, what does it mean to you to be here today?
Well, I'm with my little girl, but we have a family connection. You and I are here today. Your grandfather, my dad, Buffalo soldier, is just over the ridge there. So our connection to the military, to the nation, and our family is all here at Arlington today, and I'm just honored to be here with my little girl.
It is an honor.
He's the reason I got into this. And buried behind us, 200 yards buried behind where we were standing, is my late grandfather. So it was a very full circle moment to be at that place with the two men who inspired me. And it was, I'm forever grateful for that moment. And for ESPN's coverage of Veterans Day, they've always done a very good job.
You know, as somebody who's been working with journalists most of his career, you get an idea who has the unknown quantity X and is going to be ultra successful. And you fit in that category very, very easily. And I'm happy to say you've been ultra successful. Now, there are many journalists in America, but very few have been as successful as you are. What do you think was the turning point in your career?
Oh, gosh. I think When I was at ESPN, when I first started, I had no confidence, like none, like negative. And it wasn't exactly the most welcoming place for a younger journalist. I had started there. I was a young mother. My kids were 11 months old, 2 and 4, and I was just trying to survive. And in 2007, it was a very different network, very different world, landscape wise, and
Oh, yeah.
there wasn't nearly as much support of women within the workplace, all the things. So I would say when I went in and I bombed my first time, and I just was not prepared and hadn't really been prepared through just the way that they did things back then. I think it's much better now for new people, which makes me happy. But I realized that they were casting me aside because I sucked. Like I was bad. The confidence, the lack of confidence showed through my performance. And I realized that they probably weren't going to renew me and give me a new contract. So this is like 2008. And I had a couple bosses who said some things that were pretty hurtful. And at that moment, for the first time ever, I got angry. I got angry not just at the lack of leadership, which a lot of us experience throughout corporate America. I got angry at myself for allowing others to dictate how I felt about myself, which therefore affected my performance. And so for me to get angry, and I very rarely do, I just said, you know what? I'm going to go down swinging, fighting, and they might not renew me, but I'm going to make sure that I make it difficult. And I did everything in my power while being a young mom with these babies and just trying to please the world. And that, competitive, I think healthy anger helped me turn it around and just say, well, whatever, who cares? Screw it, right? Like if they don't like me, then they don't like me. But if I haven't given them all of me to judge, that's on me. So I think that anger actually helped me. And from there, I got a couple of more contracts. And my life really did change.
But when you see ESPN from the inside as well as from the outside, it's a different world completely. People on the outside don't understand what you have to go through and all the limitations and all the hoops and hollers you have to jump through, etc. Now,
Exactly. I don't know that anyone will ever fully comprehend that, especially because back then it was just a different place. The competitiveness is beautiful. Like I love that part of it. But sometimes I think there's maybe it's unintentional, but they pit people against each other on the talent side. And I think that's unfortunate because everyone that's there is talented. And instead of kind of there being a supportive environment, there's just not. But again, that's up to each of us.
Ooh, Sage, what do we have here?
You're welcome. Healthy start to our day, right?
Breakfast. It's cereal.
I mean, usually I have like hard-boiled eggs that you complain about.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yummy.
Then I tried several times, and honestly, I don't have any negative feelings about it. It's just the reality of what it is, and the reality of being at the top. And one of my agents told me that, because the ESPN, the worldwide leader, right? One of my agents at one point, Coach, said to me when I was really struggling with some things, said to me, you know what? It's lonely at the top. Get used to it.
oh, it's real lonely at the top, I
Yeah.
promise you that.
Yes.
But,
Changed me.
unfortunately, not many people get a chance to see how lonely it is at the top because they don't always get to the top. But you spent 16 years with the ESPN. And but there have been very few who have been as successful as you have been. What do you think was the turning point in your career? 16 years, ultra successful. What was the turning point, Sage?
The turning point for me, I think, was having children. And it's something that I always wanted to do. It was always my dream. And I didn't know how I was going to balance that with this big career dream that I had too. But in 2004, I had gotten a call from ESPN. I waited my whole life for that phone call. I was working in Washington, D.C., covering the Baltimore Ravens and the Washington Capitals and Wizards. And I got the call to go to audition at ESPN, and then I got the offer. And Coach, I actually turned it down. I turned down the offer to my dream job because I had a 20-month-old at home. I was about to give birth to number 2. I knew I wanted at least one more child. And so I had just been raised with these family values, especially as an Army kid moving across the world with your family's your everything, especially when you don't have friends because you're the new kid. And my parents really sacrificed so much to keep us intact and made us the priority. And he's an Army guy. They didn't have any money, It was a real struggle. And I just thought, if I don't keep my family as my priority, my children as my priority, and my dreams to be a mother times 3, then I'm a hypocrite. And I'll never, how can any achievement work-wise compare to being a mom? So I took a chance and turned down ESPN. And my agent was like, "Are you crazy?" She said, "ESPN doesn't need you. You need ESPN. And they're going to blackball you if you say no to them." And I prayed about it, and I took a chance and signed a new contract where I was at Comcast Sportsnet Mid-Atlantic, and had another child, had that third. I had 3. By the time my third was born, my first was still 3. So this was quick turnaround. I don't remember much from those days. And then 3 years later, after I said no, ESPN called back. And I think it was just a reminder that when you keep your priorities intact and you don't sell out for the temptations of a career, which can be very difficult and very tempting. I was scared to turn them down. That was my childhood dream. But for me, I did it the right way with putting my family first. And it worked out. I got the deal. And 3 years later, I went, and really look back on that moment, kind of the I don't know if it's courage. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but just I had the faith that God would lead me where I'm supposed to be, whatever that looks like. And it worked out.
It really did. What did your husband say about the whole event?
He was he was very supportive. He always was. And we're no longer married now. At the time, so supportive and surprised, because he was my college sweetheart, my first boyfriend, Coach. I met him when I was at Indiana University, and that's all I knew. And he knew about this dream from when I was 20, when we met. And he was surprised. And he said, "I'll support you no matter what."
That's great.
And he did. And the hard part was having to convince him to have a third child. He was done it too. And I'm like, "Listen, I've got control of this situation. Actually, you don't have much control, and we're going to have a third kid." So
You spent 16 years with ESPN, and there have been so many successful stories such as you. What do you think was a turning point of why you left? Yeah, so many stories go on. Here you are, ultra successful. Why'd you leave?
Well, the simple story is that ESPN changed. It changed a
Oh,
lot.
did it? Amen. Amen. I vote for that completely.
It changed, and that makes me sad, because it isn't what it once was, when it truly was must-see TV, and the people that I looked up to, the Dan Patricks and Stuart Scott, who was one of my best friends, and he's been gone for 9.5 years, and I miss him to this day. But basically, listen, I've been saying this for 15, 20 years, and I've been saying it publicly too. It's all about diversity of thought. That's what I lead with. That's how I try to treat others, people that I think, who think differently from me, diversity of thought. And so in 2016, when Donald Trump was elected, that's when I saw a lot of change at ESPN, when I saw executives like our leadership tweeting hateful things about the new president. And I just thought, wait, I'm so confused. This is not what leaders do. And we were told that we weren't allowed to tweet anything political, and they were. So I felt a shift then. And then with pandemic in 2020 and George Floyd, just a lot changed. And at the end of the day, all I wanted was consistency. My story's kind of, I guess, well documented, but if I'm punished for speaking my truths on an off day, away from ESPN platforms specifically, because I always wanted to keep the journalistic side of me separate from the personal side. So I never talked about my opinions on ESPN TV or platform, because that's not what viewers are looking for. But they did allow others to do that on ESPN platforms while punishing me. And I think that was my turning point, where I was so heartbroken that they chose to treat me differently because I didn't fit that narrative of ESPN and Disney. And so after many years of things like that, but nothing that had been quite as public as my suspension, etc., I just knew that I had to take a stand. And it broke my heart to have to make that decision. When you sue your company, when you're still working there, you know that you're probably not going to get a new contract, I guess. So I was somewhat prepared, but still quite sad. But also I have to tell you, the night before the lawsuit came down, I spoke to each one of my 3 kids separately. One was in college and the other 2 were in high school. And each of them were nervous. And, and it's just me now. Their father's very active and he's nearby. But otherwise, it's just me. And especially, the financial aspect of supporting children. They were scared. Mom, are you going to be able to support us? And what about college? And I said, I got you no matter what. But I apologized to them, Coach, and I said, no matter what, you don't have to stand up for Mom. You don't have to defend me or agree. If anyone, teachers, coaches, other parents, social media, which has happened a lot, where they said things to my kids about their mother, I said, just remind people that diversity of thought is everything. And then I apologize for anything that might come their way, but I promise it's going to be worth it and I'm going to protect you. My son, who's in the middle of these 2 crazy daughters of mine, he's usually pretty quiet and observant, and he stopped and he looked at me and he said, Mom, it's about time you stood up for yourself.
Tonight, she's hit the network with a big lawsuit.
I respect everyone's decision. I really do. Yeah. But to mandate it is sick. Mm-hmm. And it's scary to me in many ways.
Interview, Steele says, led to retaliation for her remarks. By early October, ESPN responded, pulling Steele off the air temporarily, saying conversations with the anchor would remain private. Now, she's suing for damages and alleged violations of her civil rights. The lawsuit says her employer continued to punish Steele by removing her from prime assignments and bowed to groupthink and forced Steele to publicly apologize and suspended her for a period of time in October 2021.
Quickly, we want more speech, not less. We hope that she's sparking a public conversation. That is what the First Amendment and free speech as a matter of policy are all about.
Oh, amen.
All these years,
oh, good.
All these years I was quiet. I thought I was doing the right thing by remaining silent and just putting it away. And in the meantime, our children watch us. Our children see when we go silent and make ourselves smaller and don't do what's right. So that moment changed me, and I will tell you this, it was 22 months from the beginning of my kind of controversy and suspension till the day that I left when I settled my lawsuit with ESPN and Disney. 22 months. I probably did my best work under the most pressure, I don't know why, and I literally would not change a thing, even the tough stuff. I am so grateful for every moment at ESPN, and as you know, there are a lot of good people left there. So I wouldn't change a thing, and I'm just grateful that I finally said enough, because it's not about just me. It's about a lot of other people who felt silenced.
I agree with you completely. When I first started with ESPN, I was there for 11 years. We had fun. We reported the sports, but we enjoyed one another, and we tried to have fun with what we're doing. And all of a sudden, oh, you can't say this, you can't say that, you can't. All this wokeness going on. And that really bothered me. I don't know why they changed, but I don't think they changed for the best. Why do you think Disney and ESPN have gone woke?
I think it starts at the top. I think a lot of people actually do believe all of these things that, fall in that woke category. And that really starts at the top of the food chain at Disney. And then at ESPN, some of them, I know many who don't agree with it there, many in leadership positions, but have chosen to go along with it. I think you can look at not just Disney, ESPN, but throughout corporate America. And even with what happened with Bud Light a few years ago in their controversy.
A company spokeswoman telling the Wall Street Journal. So what spurred all the backlash about beer?
Impressive carrying skills, right? I got some Bud Lights for us.
It follows a polarizing and brief brand partnership with trans influencer Dylan Mulvaney during March Madness, who told her 1.8 million followers on Instagram that Bud Light sent her a can with her face on it, celebrating her first year as a woman.
Whatever team you love, I love too.
But for some fans of the brand, it was no cause to celebrate.
Bud Light and Anheuser-Busch.
The hashtag Bud Light boycott appearing online, and viral TikTok showing users pouring out the beer, destroying cans, and even going as far as pretending drinking the beverage leads them to change gender.
You can't tell me that a lot of those people in those executive meetings, etc., agree with the marketing move that they made. And the fallout has been swift. Disney and ESPN have felt some of that fallout as well. So the problem is once they go there, it's hard to backtrack, right? And so that's what I'm seeing as they've continued to push it. I literally remember talking to some of my bosses about it and saying, why are we choosing to talk about this on a sports show? Why? Because to me, as a consumer and as a journalist, I always said, don't we want everybody to watch our shows? Don't we want everybody to buy our beer if you're Anheuser-Busch? Or whatever it may be, don't you want everybody to watch? Why be divisive? Just like what happened at the Olympic ceremonies, the opening ceremonies in Paris. Why choose to mock or be divisive with anyone? It's just not despite, or in addition to being maybe like morally wrong, I guess, according to me and some others, it's just bad business to separate and to divide. So I don't know why, but I do think in many ways there's some irreparable damage that's been done. But who knows? Who knows what's going to happen with this political season as well? I don't feel it getting any better anytime soon, and I'm an optimist. I'm a glass half full person. But to me, I felt that there was no way it was going to change enough at Disney ESPN for me to stick it out, and frankly, for me to continue to be really proud of the work I was doing, and that's unfortunate.
When they start telling me what shows I could be on and what I could say and what I could, that wasn't me. I'm just an individual that cares about this country. I served in the military. I'm going to have a good time, and I want the people to have a good time. To me, if you have a good time doing something, people are going to have a good time watching.
Coach, can I ask you, would you talk to, did you have, I know you probably had conversations with leadership when they told you what you could say and do. What were those conversations like?
Well, they were one-sided because they didn't let me say a lot, but they could control what I can say. They cannot control what I think and what I do. And I think you have to be able to look in the mirror and be comfortable with yourself on the decisions you make. That's all. What do you stand for? If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. So
Exactly.
I agree with that. Now, the left says they're a party of equity, diversity of thought, and free speech. But I've personally seen the opposite. In my experience, you disagree with anything they say, they try to silence you. What's your experience been with this?
Yeah, well, that's the reason why I ended up standing up for myself and filing a lawsuit against the company that I loved because of the silencing. I've said this again. You can have diversity, equity, inclusion, all of the acceptance and tolerance and all of the things that people say they want. It starts with diversity of thought. And if you can't be respectful of other people's opinions, then to me, you lost me. You lost me and you lost many others. So I think it's so fascinating. These HR departments aren't what they were. Like, it's crazy how much they've changed and incorporated these DEI policies. And if anything, to me, it's been more divisive. I remember at one point at ESPN, probably 12, 13 years ago, and they had something called the Hispanic Initiative. And on our key cards to get into the building, that there was a whole mission statement about trying to incorporate more Hispanics, and which, fine. Again, I think most normal, sane people are for diversity. Like, bring it. Just bring the best people in. While focusing on diversity. And we can't focus just on the color of our skin or our gender or whatever it might be in order to say that's the person for the job. And I remember them firing and or moving others to different departments, white men, white women, because they wanted to bring more Hispanics in. And I just thought, wait, but this person is really qualified and they're doing a good job. Just because the color of their skin, they are moved out. And I remember just feeling so confused by this. And what that did is it created some animosity and some bitterness towards the people that they replaced them with. And that, of course, so it's going to put those Hispanic people who are brought in a tough position too. It's not their fault that they were hired, but it's just, it ends up dividing, and it ends up, I think, doing the exact opposite. Fortunately, I've seen a couple of places recently just disband those DEI departments, even at the University of Alabama. it's gone there. The DEI department or whatever it's called, that's gone. And I think that's a really important move. Hopefully others follow suit, while remembering we must always consider everybody for the job. And we can easily continue to be diverse without these policies and rules that say you can only have, an Asian woman for this position. Like, that is actually racist as well. And I think we need to be called on that and held accountable for that.
I put it this way. That's not the right thing to do. If we would just do the right thing to do, everything would be fine. And the right thing is to treat everybody the right way and give the job to somebody that's capable of handling it and wants to do it well. Personally, I've not been in favor of the push to allow men to compete in women's sports. There's a prominent woman in your sports culture. How do you feel about this?
Oh, get me going at an early time of the day, Coach. This to me is ridiculous. It's insulting. It's embarrassing. It's outrageous. It's borderline criminal what they've done, what they're trying to do in women's sports. Listen, we can talk about the vaccine mandate or the vaccine and a whole bunch of other controversial topics, but this should not be in that category. Since the beginning of time, we all know men are different from women. Women are different from men. We celebrate those differences. This is #science, follow the science. There is nothing to argue about this. You can chop off your parts. You can wear whatever clothes you want, whatever makeup you want. You can do what you want. At the end of the day, how you were made is who you are. And you can take all the hormone replacement therapies as well. I don't care. And by the way, do that. Do you. But you cannot come and infiltrate women's sports when you are a boy or a man, period. And I'm so sad because Title IX, it's now been 52 years. There's been 52 years of fighting for women and equality in every aspect. And at ESPN and how far we came there with women's sports. And look at what women's college basketball is doing now. It's incredible. Like, it's so great to see the progress of women and women coaches. And you've got women coaches in the NBA now, assistant coaches. There's been such progress. And then we do something like this. The most disappointing thing to me is how many women have chosen to remain silent about this. I was asked to stop tweeting about it because I was offending others at the company. I made sure I sent off another tweet that night after I received that email because, no, let's stop living in this lie. Oh, you're going to silence me and Sam. She was told the same thing for this issue, but then we're going to let everybody else talk about all these other things that are not even related to sports on our sports programming. And I'm like, no. If we're going to preach on ESPNW, I'm going to stand up for all these women, many of whom are afraid to do what Riley Gaines is doing. I actually said this to myself as I was sending a tweet. The first tweet about, standing up and supporting you. I said, I already had the lawsuit going. I didn't know how it was going to end, but I literally said, this is a hill I will die on because these are facts. This is science. This is biology. This is all of the things. Come at me. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me to stop supporting women. Go ahead. Tell me. When, in essence, if we all, even the women in sports media who I've called on before, but it's fine. Like, nobody wants to listen and it doesn't matter who calls for it. If women came together and said, no, we've been fighting for women's sports and higher ratings and more coverage on all the sports shows and more highlights for all these years, and now we're just going to go quiet. Unfortunately, it's going to take, I think, more women probably being injured in competitions. Dave Chappelle, I love the comedian Dave Chappelle, and he has that example of LeBron James. And okay, LeBron James says tomorrow he's a woman, which means he has to do what? Play in the WNBA, where he will proceed to score 756 points a night.
When I watch sports, I'll be thinking about, think about, okay, say LeBron James changed his gender. You know what I mean? Okay, can he stay in the NBA, or, because he's a woman, does he have to go to the WNBA, where he will score 840 points a game?
Is that what we want? No, it's not what we want. And all the women on these teams know it, but they're being silent. You have the Megan Rapinos of the world who are saying, no, it's fine. interesting timing because she's retired. She would never have had any soccer career or made any team if she played against boys her whole life. So the hypocrisy is thick. And I think that if we, those of us with platforms, don't continue to speak up about it, shame on us. And I just refuse to be silent because this isn't even an opinion. This is science. These are facts. This is not this hard.
You've done a tremendous job, but as a lifelong journalist, now host of your own show, you become such a powerful advocate of free speech. How have you seen journalism change in America since the start of your career?
Oh my gosh. First of all, there was really no internet when I started in 1995. When I was in South Bend covering you, I remember having the what was it? The South Bend, the newspaper. I would get the newspaper delivered to my house every day, and I would open it up to the sports section. That's all I cared about, and go to the box scores. I was on a fantasy baseball team, 162 game season. So I sat there with my newspaper and looked at the box scores and got a calculator out. And that's how I tabulated my fantasy team every single day because there was no internet. The internet has been a blessing and a curse, as we know. And unfortunately, it's made a lot of journalists lazy and to not go face to face. And obviously technology has changed and COVID changed and we can do this, there's many benefits to that as well. But sometimes journalists get away with not having to go talk to the person and look them in the eye, whether it's a CEO, a politician, or an athlete in a locker room. Look them in the eye and ask them the question and do it the right way and do your homework. And don't just take a headline off of a social media platform on Twitter or anywhere else and think that that's the truth. Go look it up. Go do your own homework. When I got into some, hot water at ESPN, I didn't have a single journalist reach out to me and say, what did you mean? What did you say? What did you mean to say here? What were you saying here? No, they just took clips and headlines and sound bites, an 18-second clip without any context. So journalism has died in many ways. And I think that you can watch with the news media. You can look at all of the networks, whether it's MSNBC, CNN, Fox News, all of them are so biased now. I've challenged my kids who are now, like I said, 18, 20, and 22, challenge them to go dig deep to form their opinions. And don't just go to the clickbait online, especially the TikTok news. That's where that generation goes. And it's all biased. So it's hard for people to find facts to educate themselves. But we cannot give up. And we just have learned we absolutely cannot trust the mainstream media. And that breaks my heart.
Hi, I'm Fox San Antonio's Jessica Headley.
And I'm Ryan Wolf.
Our greatest responsibility is to serve our Treasure Valley communities,
the El Paso, Las Cruces communities,
Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But
we are concerned about troubling and irresponsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and false
news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Well, you express yourself very well, and you've made a very positive contribution to athletics in general and women's sports in particular. Now, what encouragement and words of advice would you give to young people today who are talking about in the world of sports journalism?
I would just say there's still so much good. There's so many people and coaches and athletes and commissioners who are doing such good and really have kept the focus on sports. It's a different landscape. And with NIL and how professional sports is, I mean, I'm sure your perspective, you just probably shake your head when you think back to how college football once was versus what it is now. And I cannot imagine what these coaches have to deal with. It's so sad. I miss some of just the basic innocence of all of it. But if we get, for instance, what happened with the Olympics, and there are many people I know who are boycotting because of how offensive the opening ceremonies was for millions of people, frankly. For me, I couldn't stand it. I was offended. I thought it was in poor taste, and that's the nice way of putting it. I don't see how that tied in to what we're celebrating with the Olympics every 4 years. And it was absolutely a slap in the face to me, because there's no way he will convince me that it was not a mockery, because of the type of people, frankly, that he had in there. And it was scantily clad people, drag queens, and play for the Last Supper. It's just, why? Time and place. Why? At the same time, I love sports and I love these athletes. And these athletes have worked their entire lives to get to this point. So you're darn right I'm going to be watching, and I'm watching all of it because I can separate. So with young journalists, you have to separate the world that's out there and some of the things that we're seeing from your why. My why was to tell stories and to learn about people's greatness and to bring people together, because to me, sports, like I said, was always the great uniter. And on a football Sunday at Giant Stadium or, Arrowhead or wherever you're watching your game, you've got 70 or 80,000 people cheering for that team. And you might not know who's standing next to you, but if Mahomes hits Kelsey on a slant and he scores, you're all high-fiving. And for 3 hours, it doesn't matter your race, your gender, your socioeconomic status, your politics, you're just one. There's so much of that. People want that. People deserve sports coverage and deserve good journalists who are willing to do their job, not just do it for clicks on social media. That desire maybe is greater now than ever before because of the divisiveness outside of sports. So I say you gotta stick to your why. Don't sell out. Don't cave in. Ask the tough questions. Do it in a professional way. Do your homework. Don't let social media do your homework for you, and be a pro when you go in there. And I know that coaches and athletes and viewers appreciate that so much.
I endorse that completely, because you don't want to have any regrets when your life's over. You're going to make mistakes, but they're made out of the right choices.
Yes.
Just have no regrets. But, the thing of our show is coaching America back to greatness. And what do you believe we need to do in this country to bring this country back to the way you were raised and the values your parents were taught you, to how we got to today's woke culture?
I mean, this might sound simple and people are like, oh, she's whatever. I just want kindness back. I do. I think that kindness in everything, even if you're at the grocery store. One of the things I miss the most and don't think was talked about enough during COVID and all the mask mandates was you couldn't see people smile. People weren't making eye contact and smiling and saying hi to someone passing by you in the produce aisle or anywhere. And I think that when you lead with kindness, even if it's you don't receive it back, it goes such a long way. That's what I try to do. And I fail a lot. Sometimes, especially on Twitter or something, where I'm like, no, we've got to discuss this, and this is wrong, and it's unfair, and it's hypocritical, and it's divisive. I have to remind myself a lot to remain kind and lead with that. For me, that comes from my faith. And my faith in God throughout the last couple years of controversy, and frankly, throughout my whole life. And I feel like when you know that it's not just about you, there's a higher power. And even if you don't have a faith, I mean, it shouldn't be just about you. How about your family, your friends? I think if we lead with that and the big picture, because I know this, Coach, that at some point, my platform will be gone. I thought I was going to fall over after ESPN and just, oh my gosh, what do? You kind of get addicted to that attention and all that. And there is a whole world out there. But at some point, that world's not going to care. And what do you have? And who do you have? I got my babies, and they're not babies anymore, but they'll always be my babies. I have my mom and dad, who are my everything. I talk every day, and I'm grateful for every moment. They're 78 and 75 and have some health issues. And that's my priority. And I think if you keep others, whatever that is in your life, whoever that is, as the priority, then you'll be able to accept the other stuff, have that faith if that's something that you want to believe in and grow from, and just do your best every day. I think it's more simple than we try to make it,
I agree. I don't know how many shows I've done, maybe 100. But if we took the highlight of the 100 shows, your answer there about caring about other people, about kindness, is so important, and we've lost so much of it. And what could I get? How will I benefit if I do this favor for them? No, reach out to help people. Everybody needs a kind word, a smile, and encouragement. And what a great inspiration you have been, Sage, for so many people. And I hope particularly young people will understand the values and the characters that your parents taught you and you passed on your children. God bless you, and thank you for being with us.
God bless you, Coach. Thank you. And thank you for all those years ago in South Bend in 1995 when you did the Macarena with me and made this young, nervous reporter feel so comfortable in your office. Thank you for being you for all these years.
Thank you. God bless you.
And he walks away after winning his 100th game as the head coach here at Notre Dame.
The reason I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth, I was born in this country. It isn't what you have, it's what you're taught about the values of life.
We trying to save souls.
See, there's a rule in life that you're either growing or you're dying. And like an old friend once said, we as Americans need to start winning again. Everyone should ask this question. Am I willing to endure the pain and the suffering and the sacrifice it takes to be a champion?